All right, Maris, how's it going? I just wanted to start this week's episode off with a little bit of a warning and an apology in terms of the sound quality for this show. Things didn't go exactly to plan, so I do apologise to you, the listeners, for that. And also I apologise to Owen, who was making his debut this episode on the Blue Army podcast. So apologies for the technical difficulties during this episode, and hopefully we'll be back stronger next week. Talking about being back stronger, the Blue Army podcast has once again appeared in the Apple Podcast Top 100 for footballing podcasts in the UK. Thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, downloading, clicking on links, all the good stuff that gets us into those charts. It means an awful lot to me, and it gives me the inspiration to carry on and producing these beautiful podcasts. Once again, sorry for the technical issues on this week's episode. We're going to do our best to get things sorted, and we're probably going to use some of that lovely sponsorship money from the old fire station to invest in some better equipment. So thank you very much for bearing with us on the Blue Army podcast. I still hope you enjoy this week's show.
My name's Chris Miller.
My name is Paul Anderson.
My name is Mark Boyd, and you listen to the Blue Army podcast.
Hello, my name is Derek Combs, and I listen to the Blue Army podcast.
Right. Anyway, we'll just crack on with it and see how we get on, mate? So pretty much I'll introduce you. I'll ask you a little bit about the stand, and then we'll go on to the Instagram page first, and then you can talk about the YouTube page afterwards for a little bit. Just the simple questions: how you got started, blah, 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 how you getting set up, how you getting on, anything you've learned so far, that kind of stuff. Then we'll get on with the Blue Army podcast kind of stuff, the match crack, the joke of the week, the birthdays, that kind of thing. And yeah, man, I mean, like, if you've heard it before, you should pretty much be able to get yourself through it. You should be all right, yeah?
Yeah, anymore. It's fine.
Beautiful. So, like, I mean, like, you know, you're making your debut here on the Blue Army podcast. Like, have you done anything like this before? Just sort of like a podcast, or is it all YouTube based and all sort of like Instagram so far?
Yeah, so Instagram and you put one YouTube video up, and that it's done better than I thought it would, to be honest. So, yeah, this is my first time.
All right, man. Well, I'll probably get on with you'll be all right. You'll be all right. I'll probably get on with introducing you, mate. Here we go. Oh, all right, Maras. How's it going? And welcome back to the Blue Army podcast. This is, of course, episode 65. Thanks very much to Derek Holmes, who appeared on last week's episode of the Blue Army podcast. But this week I have a young man making his Blue Army podcast debut. I'm talking about a guy trying to crack the YouTube world and also having his fingers in Instagram. We've had one of his friends on the podcast before. This young man is called Owen. Welcome to the podcast, Owen. How's it going, mate?
I'm all right, thanks. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, man. And yeah, like I've said, we've had your friend on before. He had a great time here on the Blue Army podcast. That was way back when, though, and we've obviously got a lot of new listeners since then. So, I mean, tell us about the CUFC Stand Instagram page. That's why your friend was on. Tell us about your friend. Tell us about how you guys met and how you got started with the Instagram page.
Well, we've been mates in school, and we started going to games together about 3 or 4 years ago. We just fell in love with it since, and we thought we'd start just as a passion, and it's kind of blossomed. I wasn't expecting it to do as well as it did, but in the end, yeah, we've made quite a channel out of it. So yeah, it's good. Good for the boy.
What do you think it is? What do you think it is that you guys are doing that like other people aren't doing? Maybe to get sparked off on that Instagram. Is it all about hashtags? Like, what is it about, man? Give me a helping hand here.
I don't actually know. We know quite a few people that were Carlisle fans from, like, obviously school and stuff like that. So they all give it a follow, and they just sort of built as we put in more and more. I wasn't expecting it to do as well as it did, but thanks to everyone who follows, I appreciate it.
Well, that's it. I mean, what's obviously you've got yourself on the Instagram there, but now you're setting yourselves up in the world of YouTube. I mean, I've seen a little bit of what the page is about. I went over there, give you a subscribe myself. Match Day Vlogs. I mean, what made you think of that? Why is it Match Day Vlogs? And I mean, What's that? What's the challenge of that all about, man? That must be difficult, really, to always be filming on the move.
Yeah, it was a tough day to of filming and editing and stuff. My mate actually pitched to me the idea, and I was kind of dismissive of it first because I didn't think YouTube's obviously really hard to do well in because it's such a competitive thing, especially with football. But yeah, and then he kind of just did it himself. Like he made the video and I watched. No offense, though, I was really shocked at how well he did. So yeah, I was quite impressed with him. So.
I mean, the videos are looking good, man. I mean, how do people get to the videos? What's the page called? Obviously, I'll put a link in myself, but like, tell us all about that, man. The branding, what's it all about?
Well, the page is called. It's just called The Stand. It's quite simple, I know. And yeah, as you've already explained, we do match day vlogs. I think we're going to start doing, obviously, in the summer, in January, we're going to start doing like transfer news and transfer targets for Carlisle, and like our dream, like starting 11 for the start of next year. So yeah, you can get it through. There's a link in our Instagram bio that you can get access to it, and obviously there's going to be a link at the end of this podcast. So as we grow, it's going to be easier and easier to find.
That's cool, man. I mean, that's the kind of content I was doing over the summer. I had a lot of fun doing that, kind of like predicting who we're going to sign, who can we maybe slot in, and then obviously, you know, you guys can branch out with a name like The Stand. You know, you guys can branch out, talk about the World Cup that's happening in Qatar and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, like the potential is obviously limitless for you guys. So I mean, like, good luck with that project, my friend. But round here we got some traditions to crack on with on the Blue Army podcast, mate. And the first thing we like to do here is obviously the Blue Army podcast joke of the week. Is he having a laugh? I think he's trying to. It's the Blue Army podcast joke of the week. Right, mate. Sometimes this goes down like a lead balloon, and sometimes this is all right. But here we go, mate. What do you call an exploding monkey?
I don't know. What is it?
A baboom! Stunned silence. Most of the jokes do deserve here on the Blue Army podcast, but that's why we have traditions here on the Blue Army podcast, and that's why we added the next segment, because it's somewhat of a pick-me-up and it adds a lot of nostalgia to these podcasts these days. I'm talking about the birthdays, and the first birthday from this week goes to Mr. Mike Edwards, who turned 42, a hell of a defender in his day. Nick Anderton, obviously a player you'll remember, sir, the captain of Carlisle United last season. I obviously gave my thoughts a lot on the podcast last year about Nick Anderton and the fact that I didn't necessarily feel like he deserved the captaincy for the most part of last season. What are your feelings regarding Nick Anderton? Do you feel like he was a good servant for the club? What are your memories of Nick Anderton at Carlisle United?
I was quite different to all my friends. My friends weren't a fan. I always rated him. I thought he was a bit of a workhorse. He always put 100% in. You could tell he liked the club. I think he deserved the captaincy when it came to something, because he always worked hard. You could see him. He was very vocal on the pitch, and the manager was quite a leader in training. So it was quite different when it came to Anderton. So.
I mean, he did have his moments with the club, but I feel like he had more bad moments than good moments. And towards the end, my relationship with the man just soured a little bit. But carrying on with the birthdays, Craig Roden turned 29 and Mark Cullen turned 30. Not too many birthdays this week, mate. Mark Cullen was, I feel like he was a big striker back in the day. I mean, when I say back in the day, I don't even mean that long ago. But yeah, obviously only turning 30s. Yeah, we'll plow on to the news, my friend. And I've got a little bit to clear up. Somebody pointed out to me on social media that I made a bit of a hash of the Morgan Feeney story last week on the podcast. But I do want to say the news update this week is that Morgan Feeney has been passed fit from those heart palpitations that he was having that forced a substitution in the game against Walsall. He's been having some heart tests, mate, and the tests have came back and everything's okay with Morgan Feeney. Morgan Feeney, a player this year that has had the chance, finally, you would say, by the age he's got to 23 in his footballing career, somebody who's finally got the chance to play first team week in, week out, and somebody that is improving in front of your very eyes, you would say, week in, week out in the Carlisle United team. Is there anyone else that stands out for you in terms of most improved player for Carlisle United this season?
Obviously, Feeney's up there. I think Howard's been amazing all season, so I don't really think I can bring him in. I didn't really rate Jack Armour at the start of the season, but I can't really not say it. My opinion's completely changed on Jack Armour. I think it's more after seeing Kelvin Mellor try and play football. I've started to appreciate him a lot more.
Not a fan of Kelvin Mellor?
Oh, it's dreadful in my opinion.
When he's came back from injury, more recently, the performances haven't been great. He's been caught short on the ball a few times. And that might be a factor of him coming back from injury and lacking a bit of match fitness. But I feel like he did start pretty well when he came in. Do you know what I mean? I feel like he did, you know? What do you feel?
I don't actually. He's not an awful player. He won't be a professional footballer, but I don't know why you'd start him over Joe Riley, because the attacking output he brings, even the defensive output he brings, is faster. He's better on the ball. He can move the ball up and down the pitch. He can pass the ball. I don't see the reason why you'd start Mellor.
Yeah, I understand. Are you there? Are you there? I got you back. I understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. But with Joe Riley, obviously, he is a central midfielder most predominantly, and that's where most of our injuries have been with Callum Guy and with Jamie Devitt going down. So I would try and push Joe Riley into that midfield position, and you would try and leave Mellor at right back, because on paper he should be the best right back in the club. I do understand what you're saying about leaving Riley at right back, and yeah, Mellor hasn't been very good recently. So I do understand what you're saying there, but on reflection, I do still feel like Mellor's the best right back at the club, the best right back option at the club. I mean, you can disagree with that. You obviously do. Fair enough, mate. We'll move along. The lone news this week is that Taylor Charters was benched for Gateshead, who only managed a 1-1 draw against Kettering. Apparently, it was. I don't know, just one of those ones, mate, when it happens, you know, they just take a player out for a game and it might just be a fitness issue, it might be a fun, like he's not going to play next season and there next season probably in one of those moves. Tristan Abrahams played 5 minutes for Grimsby and Menezi Mempala played 15 minutes for Weymouth. Both players have only been coming off the bench for, say, like the last 10 weeks of their loan periods, mate. Menezi Mempala, for me, is somebody that just hasn't had his chances at Carlisle United. And when somebody new appears on the podcast, I do like to ask them their opinions on Menezi. I mean, have you had a chance to see him play? Have you seen any of the goals that he did score in the cup for us? Did he do anything to impress you?
Yeah, I've seen him a few times. I think he's a bit hit or miss, because I think I've seen him play 4 or 5 times. Some of the games he plays, he's absolutely unbelievable. Like, I'm surprised at like his quality on the ball, but some games he just doesn't want to know. He doesn't like a tackle. He's poor off the ball. But on the ball, don't get me wrong, he's a really good player, but not for me. I don't think. Not for me.
But I mean, if you've got, I mean, you don't have to choose between him and Tristan Abrahams, but like, I mean, how do you feel about Tristan Abrahams as well as a striker?
He works hard. That's pretty much all. That's the only good thing I've got to say about Tristan Abrahams. He's just poor, isn't he? He's poor.
He would throw himself about, you're right, yeah. He did have a bit of heart, he would throw himself about, but there was none of that real quality in that 6-yard area when you would need it. And when I did see like his goals, he does score in flurries, which is just isn't what you need at this league level. You need consistency when it comes to goals, and so unfortunately it's just not worked out for him. And obviously he's on a higher wage. Unfortunately, he's not a player that the manager's brought in himself, and so you'd imagine he's going to be one of those players that get moved on. by the end of the season. And that's something that's been talked about a lot in the news, Owen, mate, is who's going to get moved on at the end of the season, who's going to get kept on at the end of the season. Talks have been developing with manager Paul Simpson, and he has gone as far as to say that he would like to stay with Carlisle United, which is at least a new development. He's normally at least added a caveat to that statement, such as, I'd like to stay at Carlisle United as long as things are going to be okay and such, blah, 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 blah. Very political, but you can tell why Paul's doing that. But this time he's came out and said that he does want to be Carlisle United's manager next season. And I mean, well, surely now that gives him free license to start chopping heads and kicking ass, right? Like, surely that's going to be time for... These last couple of games might not mean anything in terms of the club's safety, but this is really, a lot of these players are going to be playing for the Carlisle United careers in the next couple of games.
Yeah, it's crunch time, I think, for some of the players, because some of the players that I've seen this season they've been okay, just okay, which I don't think that's good enough for Carlisle. I think we're a big enough team to attract players that are consistent at this level, because I think Carlisle, as a club, isn't in a good enough position for what it should be, because we're a big club supported by one city club, so we're well supported. We're a big team. Some of the players just don't feel like they want to be there. So it's definitely crunch time for some of these players, to be honest.
I mean, one of the players for me... Sorry, go on.
I think Simpson should maybe start some players that don't normally play, just to give him a bit of a who he likes, who he dislikes. Obviously, he's seen them all in training, but it's different in a match. So yeah, I'd switch it about a bit at the end of the season.
Who do you want to see more of?
I know Lewis Sanders started the past 2 games, but I'd like to see him. I'd like to see how he fares with Dennis up front. I think he'd be good. There's not many, to be honest. I think I've seen everyone I need to see this year without... There's a few of the younger boys, obviously, Josh Dixon and stuff like that, because they're supposed to be all right. That's about it, to be honest. I'd offload quite a few players at the end of the year, because I think we need to rebuild.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be a bit of a rebuild job, and that seems to be what the manager's been hinting at, to be quite honest, after the Harrogate game. And we'll get to talking about the Harrogate game just in a little bit, mate. But in more news, the votes have opened for Carlisle United's Player of the Season, the annual competition that the News and Star run. Link is going to be at the end of this podcast in the description somewhere, so you can go and place your vote on Carlisle United's best player so far this season. So obviously, Owen, the inevitable question to you, sir, is who would you vote for?
Oh, I was torn. I was very torn. It took me about 10 minutes to find the answer. I was torn between Simiyu, Mark Howard, and Feeney. In the end, I went for Howard, just because he's just his consistency. He's just cool on the ball. Yeah.
I feel the same for me, man. Like, that's the guy I went for. I went for Howard in terms of consistency, putting the minutes in, first team performances. Like, that's the guy you go for. Other people that popped up for me, that Mellish has played week in, week out, and he's been asked to play pretty much all over the pitch this season, and managed to turn out like plenty of 7 performances, you know what I mean? 7 out of 10 performance, plenty of good performances in terms of Mellish. He's not doing as much as catching the headlines as he used to do, but you know, he is filling in when he needs to fill in. So yeah, the votes are obviously open for that, and that's the end of the news. We'll move on to the match crack, Owen, and this is going to be the hard part of the episode. Obviously, Carlisle United's 3-0 defeat to Harrogate Town. And in tradition, as we normally do here in the Blue Army podcast, we go through Carlisle United's starting lineup for the game against Harrogate Town, which is Mark Howard in goal, Riley, Simiyu, Feeney, Mellish, and Armour across the back 5, with Gibson, Devine, and Dickinson in the midfield, with Patrick and Alessandra starting up front. Now, I mean, everything just kind of went to shit in the first half. Carlisle didn't play very well, and Simpson has rightly criticised his team. Owen, have you managed to see? Were you there at Harrogate, or have you managed to see some of the highlights? Like, what's been your view of that first half in terms of Carlisle United's performance?
I managed to get a hold of the game actually on. I've got a way to watch all the games, and I follow so. I was watching that. It was not fun to watch. I'll tell you that for sure. Our midfield didn't seem to get a grasp on the game. I think Devine was absolutely shite. My French. Dickinson was poor. Gibson was average at best. Alessandro played okay. He had a few chances in the game as well, but he wasn't good enough. I would defend him for some of their headers, marks from the crosses. It was awful to watch, honestly. Worst performance I've seen under Simo this year.
Massive letdown. I mean, even players that you don't expect to let you down did let us down on the day. The first goal, Mark Howard absolutely caught in no man's land, in two minds, whether or not to come out and claim the ball or stay in his line and wait for the ball, as it were, and just caught in no man's land, and the header goes in, mate. I mean, the second goal, a set piece as well. Do you feel like, after a first goal like that, when a goalkeeper comes off his line, even when it's somebody experienced as Mark Howard, it does affect them as the game goes on, and maybe sticking on his line for the second goal, was that the best thing to do, or was that another mistake from Howard? Because to be fair, like, sometimes good set pieces are just good set pieces, aren't they? And that's what Harrogate do, that's what Harrogate, that's how they survived. That's their main weapon.
I don't think Howard done much wrong for the second goal. Obviously, he made the mistake caught in two minds. I think he made his decision. Even if it was the wrong decision, I'd rather he made one or the other, just mixed between two. I think it was more the defending for the second goal, because it was awful there. And our defence has been quite solid in the same way. I'll give him that, but for that goal, it was poor.
Yeah, I mean, the first half was pretty much shambolic. Carlisle did actually get into it a bit more in the second half, with a couple of changes were made. As in terms of these loan players that are being brought in, obviously, again, I have to keep telling people none of these players have been brought in by Paul Simpson, but he obviously likes Ottomei to the point where he's giving him a couple of opportunities in the team, and he might be looking back to maybe bring him back next season. Has Ottomei done anything to impress you at all? Because he's not impressed me that much.
I don't mind Omatei. He's good on the ball. You could tell he's playing in the academy in the Premier League anyway, because he's obviously got the quality. I don't think he's old enough to play in League Two. Obviously, it's a very physical league, our league. So I don't think his youth helps him very much. But I think in 3 or 4 years' time, he'll be a top striker. But I don't think he's old enough yet to fare in League Two.
Yeah, I mean, you might be right in terms of development, but I did go down to Carlisle United versus Carlisle City in a Cumberland Cup, and he played a large part of that game, and he was absolutely in the back pocket of a non-league defender for most of the game, and not only physically but mentally as well. And I mean, like, you don't want to judge somebody maybe perhaps based on one game, but he's also not necessarily done too much to impress me in terms of his performances at Carlisle United. The third goal, mate. It was a good goal. I mean, it looked good. Carlisle maybe a bit lackadaisical, closing down players. We probably made Harrogate look really good. Again, it's one of those things when you've got wingers playing in central midfield positions. They're not the kind of players that are used to closing people down. And our midfield is slow to react when the ball is getting played around in those triangles and in those squares, in those positions around them, when there's only 3 midfielders to fan out and do that job. And then they just found a gap, didn't they? And played a nice little 1-2 and got through the Carlisle back line. And it was a nice finish. And it just really rubs it in when your team's already 2-0 down, to see that kind of goal go in, to see them chasing the ball around like a bunch of amateurs. And then, like I said, after the game, obviously Carlisle United losing this game by 3-0. After the game, Paul Simpson's comments about the squad, and now saying those words that many managers do say towards the end of the season, that you are playing for your career. You are playing for your career now, mate. And Owen, I mean, who's top of your retain list and who's top of your release list in terms of the end of the season?
Well, for the start, obviously, Mark, I would keep him. He saved us this season. Obviously, Callum Guy was phenomenal until he got injured. I'd keep Feeney. I'd keep all of our back line, I think it's the midfield we need to improve on. I'd certainly be putting... I don't rate Mellor. I'd certainly put Mellor up there. I don't like Devine either. I think Devine's a poor player.
Yeah.
Obviously the boys on loan. Tristan. I keep Taylor Charters. I like Taylor Charters. He's played in the league and the cup. I think he's been a great player. Very simple to ball. Doesn't lose it that much. So yeah, 2 or 3 to go and 2 or 3 to keep.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a big clear out. You feel like at the end of the season, there are going to be a lot of players coming in, especially hopefully if the board get things right and manage to return the service. The phone always feels like I'm talking to her. Obviously, if the board get things right and get Paul Simpson the contract that he wants and he stays on next season, the contact book that Paul Simpson has is just dreams for a League Two team. You know, the players that we might be able to bring in, the investment that comes with a manager like Paul Simpson as well, in terms of more local businesses wanting to be involved in the football team, which will improve the finances of the club. We always have to give a man of the match here on the Blue Army podcast, mate. And I know we've lost by 3-0, but we do have to make our nominations. For me, in terms of the highlights that I've seen, I'm going to give it to Patrick O'Mari. He looked like he was trying to chase most things down. And he just didn't seem to be able to really do too much. So I'm just going to give it to Patrick O'Mari. Patrick, sorry. What about you?
I don't think Patrick is that good, to be honest. I watched the game. He lost honestly the amount of times he lost the ball from running through the middle of the pitch, getting dispossessed. His passing was poor. He made a lot of misplaced passes.
Yeah.
I know he missed an absolute sitter, but I'll give it to Alessandra. He chased everything. His hold-up play was good. Made some good layoffs, made some good passes. So I'll probably give it to Lewis Alessandra for that there.
Yeah. I mean, fair dues. I mean, there's obviously a reason the manager wants to look at Louis Alessandra going into the team, because I don't feel like there's been a knock to Dennis or anything. So Dennis is obviously a player that you want to see here next season. I think he's got an 18-month contract, so he will be here next season. Not 100% sure on that. But we'll move on, mate. We'll move past that horrible 3-0 defeat and hopefully look forward to better times for Carlisle United. We're going to be playing against Stevenage, another side who have been in and around us all season. I mean, you'd hope for better things against Stevenage, wouldn't you, mate? And we will make our predictions about the scoreline, but I mean, how long have you been a Carlisle United fan for? Like, surely you've got some memories of Stevenage and Carlisle United clashes.
Oh, of course. See, this is the thing. I've been a Carlisle fan since I was the youngest, obviously. I've only started really being a diehard fan for the past 3 or 4 seasons. I don't know why. It's just, obviously, my mate Jack invited me to a game. I just got absolutely obsessed with that. So I'm going to be honest with you, pal. Not many. I can't lie.
I mean, like, we've got a great rivalry with them in terms of like conference finals and I mean, like many games in our history, and I mean, they're just one of the teams similar to us. You know, we seem to yo-yo up and down between like League 1 and 2, and we have good years and bad years, and I mean, it's hopefully going to be a great clash. We've got a great rivalry against Stevenage, mate. There's a lot of history there against Stevenage. In terms of their league form at the moment, they are doing quite well for a team in their position. And Carlisle haven't really been doing quite as well. So I'm going to say Carlisle are going to win, obviously, like I normally say. But I'm going to say Carlisle are going to win just 1-0. Just 1-0 this time, mate, just to get back on track. What's your scoreline prediction for Carlisle Stevenage?
Yeah, no more.
We got you. What do you think the scoreline? What do you think the scoreline is going to be for Carlisle versus Stevenage?
I'm going to go with. I think it'll be a bit of an interesting. Obviously, it'll be a really tight game, as you said. I'm going to go for 2-1 Carlisle because we all love a bit more goals, so a bit more excitement. So, yeah, 2-1.
Yeah. Who's your goal scorers? Go on, throw that in the hat. Who's your goal scorers?
I think it'll be a bit of you expect. I think someone like Jack Armour or Joe Riley will come back post and score. Then I think it'll be in the 70th or 80th minute. I think Amari will turn up again. I think he'll score to make it 2-1 Carlisle, and then we'll hold on to the end.
Very nice, man. Very nice. Now, in terms of the way that the season's going, obviously we're coming towards the end of the season. Carlisle most recently making themselves safe at the end of the league campaign. Obviously, at the start of the season, surely you were thinking playoffs, right? Like, surely you were thinking playoffs.
Oh God, yeah. I was expecting a lot more than we actually have done. Obviously, in that first game against Colchester when we drew, I was a bit disappointed, but I still had faith. And then obviously games and losses, and I started to think, oh dear, we could be in a bit of trouble here. So yeah, I was expecting more than we actually got.
But in terms of things coming to the end of the season, there are nominations that normally happen at the end of the season in terms of like best player, improved player, and I'm going to do a bit of a competition here on the Blue Army podcast, Owen, and I'm going to have a couple of different guests on over the next couple of weeks who are all going to have the opportunity to nominate their 3 players for Carlisle United's player of the season, and obviously the person with the most votes will go on to receive some kind of postal award that I'll post at Brunton Park, and maybe they'll pass on to the player, and maybe they'll take a picture of it on social media. But my friend, who would you like to nominate for your 3 best players for Carlisle United this year?
I'm going to go, obviously, Howard, because I voted player of the season.
Howard, player of the season. Makes sense.
Yeah. Simiyu and who else? It's a tough one for third. It really is, because there's been quite a few players this year. Tell you what, I'll go with John Mellish. Yeah, I will. I'll go with John Mellish.
That's a good shout, man. That's a good shout. In terms of Simiyu, like, obviously, it feels like he's been at Brunton Park all season long, but he hasn't. He signed at the end of January, and he hasn't played that many games, and he didn't start that very well at Carlisle United. So, I mean, they're the reasons why he might not necessarily appear in my top 3, but there is always something I like to do at the end of an episode, Owen, and it's quite a new feature here on the Blue Army podcast. We have been talking quite heavily about recruitment, the end of the season vibes, people getting released, we have been, talking end of the season vibes, and that means it's time for Skelly's newest feature, which is Skelly's Shit Stirrer. If you could steal 2 players from Barrow at the end of the season, which 2 players would you steal?
Ooh. From what I saw when I went to Barrow home and Barrow away, I think Ollie Banks is a good player. I think he's all right for Barrow. Obviously, his goal in the away game was quality. And then I think, obviously, I'm a bit of a Leeds fan as well, so I'd go for Robbie Gotts as well. Why not? Get him in.
Oh, wow. Okay. Where does the Leeds fan thing come from?
My dad, my whole family, really. My mum, my dad. Yeah, family thing.
Yeah, I got an uncle that supports Leeds. Like, used to be a season ticket holder, more recently now a season ticket holder as well. Ellen Road's a great place to go. I mean, for me, I'd probably steal Patrick Brough, just because he's the Carlisle old boy. I feel like we need more options over there at left back, someone that can maybe fill in when Armour's maybe going through a bad run of form. And I would like actually to see Offren Zanzala come back and play up front. I feel like we had something with him, and he looked useful for us for a small period of time, and a player like a manager like Paul Simpson, I feel like could use him like that Derek Holmes kind of role, and have like that big strong player with the 2 other strikers around him that just get to feed goals off him. So that might be quite useful, man. Owen, thanks very much for joining me here on the Blue Army podcast. The way that these things do tend to go is when Carlisle United lose, there's not so much to talk about in terms of news and things like that. So don't feel bad that we haven't rambled on for 2 hours. I mean, it's one of those things where you can just go short and sweet with it, mate. Thank you so much for joining us, and please do let everybody out there know where they can find the stand on Instagram and how they can find the stand on YouTube as well.
Just get the link on our Instagram profile. That'll be good as well, because we're really trying to grow the channel. Obviously, more content's coming out, and obviously going to be a link at the bottom of the podcast as well that could help. So come on, join the support, be part of the stand, and let's grow the channel.
That's it, man. We'll have to get you and the Blue Army TV lad Liam Denwood involved in some kind of head-to-heads, man. We and Liam Denwood have been going head-to-head on a couple of challenges, and over the summer we've got ideas to do more challenges, and it does involve maybe a few more faces. So I mean, that could be a lot of fun for us all to do a couple of penalty shootouts, maybe like a five-a-side thing. We'll figure it out, man. We'll figure it out. But mate, thank you so much for joining me this week. This has been episode 65 of the Blue Army podcast, and the return of the loud and local segments this week with the man who normally records our theme tune, Mangy Moose. He's an absolute legend. Check out his music on Spotify. Owen, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Blue Army podcast. We'll obviously try and get you back over the summer for one of our summer specials. It's great to have another young local voice on social media. All the best with all that, mate. I mean, there's not much left for us to say, really, apart from bye to the listeners. So very much for joining us, Owen, mate. That was great.
Right. No problem at all. Right.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you, the listeners, very much for joining us. This has been episode 65 of the Blue Army podcast, and bye for now.